Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The SparkFile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're an OG listener, welcome back, little Sparky. If you're joining us for the first time, you should know that you are so fucking welcome here.
Whether you have put your creativity on pause during this time or whether you've clung to it like a lifeline, either way, just welcome.
Just so you know what you're getting into, there will be profanity. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark file? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are really good questions, and we actually do have answers.
We do. A Spark file is a place where you consistently collect all of your inspirations and fascinations.
And here's the deal. We are makers who make all kinds of things.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time or want to be making stuff all the time, you know that the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry, especially now.
But don't despair, because we are here for you, and we are on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a consistent examination of the stories we tell ourselves.
Let's get into it. Or a way to express yourself every day, from the top of your head to the tips of your tiny toes.
Every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark file and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you might just end up looking like $1,000,000. So without further ado, let's open up the Spark File. Baby Cams.
Hi, Baby Blackwell. Just trying out 2 years in, just trying out some new ways to say the Spark File.
Fresh reads. Sure. Baby Cams, I'm trying to think if there's any news. Is there anything we need to tell the people?
You know what? Our friend Megan sent us a book that is all about the treasure hunt. Hold for it. One moment.
Megan Page.
You know, I've already ordered the book, so.
Friend of the podcast, client, memoirist.
This book is called Chasing the Thrill: Obsession, Death, and Glory in America's Most Extraordinary Treasure Hunt.
Ooh, the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt?
By Daniel Barbarisi.
Now, if you don't know what we're talking about, please go back to our episode on armchair treasure hunts.
That's right.
And then we did a follow-up when, shit started getting real and treasures started getting found.
A few times.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you, Megan Page. Thank you for that. We do appreciate it. Is there anything
Yeah.
else, or should we just dive into these
I
sparks?
say we dive into our sparks.
Let's do
Having
it.
given all of the exciting updates, we can now proceed to sparks.
That's all we got.
Boo.
You want to go first?
Yeah, you want me to go first? I'll go
Yeah.
first. I'm going to do it. Suze, years ago, I remember being in a Barnes & Noble. Remember those?
Uh-huh.
Kids, it's a bookstore. It's a bookstore where all the books are out for you to see and touch and leaf through. It's like a library. Remember those? You get the idea. I recall picking up a book, reading the title of the book alone, and thinking, that's it. I need this. Boom. And I
you
bought
stole
it.
it. Oh, no,
It was not.
you bought
It was a nonfiction. No. Yeah, I did not steal it. I bought it. But I literally was like, read no more. The title, I'm in. The title of the book was, and still is.
The suspense is killing me.
The title of the book is Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me. And I was just
It's
like,
a great title.
I'm so fascinated. Mistakes were made, but not by me. It's been a minute since I picked that book up, but the gist of it is that when we make a mistake or when we do something that we know was wrong, like maybe mistreat people or say something rude or act out in some way, we experience such cognitive dissonance in our own brains. There's such a disconnect that our brains will literally work to calm that dissonance by creating stories that we can tell ourselves and others that make sense of it. And most importantly, that absolve us of responsibility. Stories that emphasize how we were right or justify our behavior as morally right. Like we made the right decision. We behaved in an appropriate way given the circumstances. Essentially, it's self-justification.
Interesting. Can I jump in and say I was just watching a TV show last night, and a woman, a character on the TV show had done something that she knew was like shitty. But she did it anyway because in the moment she was just like, I want the satisfaction of having said this to this person. And then there was a scene later where she expressed like that she knew it was shitty, but she couldn't resist. And somebody who loved her basically absolved her and said, yeah, but you're such a good person. And I was like, oh, isn't it interesting how in comforting people that we love, we'll also do it for other people.
We might give them a justification. Yes. Yeah. We might give them the story that they need to like latch onto, and their brain is like, yes, you're right. I am a good person. And
I saw the character like a sense of ease and peace wash over them.
That's right.
Because somebody had given them a story that they could hold on to. And I have also been the person looking for the story that I could hold on to so I could just be at peace.
Well, I think like this topic fascinates me, like on a character level, on a human level.
Fascinating. Yes.
Like I'm like so intrigued by the ways that it shows up in our lives. And I feel like my family has had a lot of stories. And so probably in the years that I've spent trying to, just delve into my family dynamics and stuff, there's a lot of it there. So I feel like I can see when I'm doing it and I can see when others are doing it. It's like something you can't unsee. Like once you have an awareness of it, you can't unsee it at this point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I will be in the moment and be like, and I'll be doing it. And I can see Wes's face and I'm like, and I know this story does not forgive. Like I did a bad thing. And I know ultimately what the answer is. I need to go apologize and I need to say I messed up. Ugh. But I can watch as my brain like attempts to create a story. So it's really interesting as you gain that awareness. You're like, all right, thank you, brain. Thank you for trying, but I really do owe someone an apology.
So again, to recap, tell me if I'm getting this right. What you're saying is when we have done something that we know is not cool, or that it has, I don't know, hurt someone else or offended someone else, or our brain may have a tendency to look for a way to do a little brain gymnastics to justify it or create the narrative that we did not make the mistake.
Yeah, that's right. Mistakes were made, but not by me.
But not by us, baby.
That is exactly right. And even if, we did do something, it's like there's a good reason for it, because what you don't understand is da 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 da, and then the stream of like, but they did this and they did that and blah blah blah. You're like, but ultimately you could have made a different choice. And
what you did, what you're responsible for, your actions, your words. Yes. Okay. Got it.
Apologies are needed. So the thing is, it can show this self-justification can show up in really harmless ways, meaning like no one is harmed in the self-justification, or it can show up in more detrimental ways. For example, a harmless one might be, you and I think about this topic a good deal in relation to creativity and the stories we all tell ourselves about why we're not creating the thing we want to be creating. I'm too old. I don't have time. I don't have the skill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever,
Justifications.
Yeah. And I have a phrase for that. You know it, Suze. I call those the stories we tell ourselves to keep ourselves from telling our stories.
Have the t-shirts printed now.
T-shirts, merch people, come on. But these are mostly like fear related. And at the bottom of it, we're afraid of the vulnerability that comes from creating something. It might not be good. People will judge it. It feels uncomfortable. So this justification is a way to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves from experiencing the potential future pain. And it makes sense. This is a justification for why we're not doing a certain thing that feels unsafe to do. But sometimes self-justification shows up to explain away something we have done. And sometimes the things we have done are whoppers, so big that our brains can't wrap themselves around the thing. In those cases, it might cling with absolute desperation to a story that it needs to be true, because otherwise we'd have to face ourselves. We'd have to apologize. We'd have to admit that we made a big whopper of a mistake. So this book, Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me, by Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson, came to mind recently when I turned on the documentary Made You Look, a true story about fake art. Have you seen this, Suze?
Oh, yes. You know what? That title always escapes me. I'm like, yes, I have watched that documentary. I never remember what it's called, but it's called Made You Look.
Made You Look, a true story about fake art. Wes and I watched it a few weeks ago, and we had some hearty discussions afterwards. And it's the kind of thing that, if a week would go by and be like, you know what I've been thinking? It just sort of seeped in there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
So at the heart of this story is this basic and extremely powerful force within us, the one that cannot admit when we are wrong, because the consequences are just too large. In this case, we have an art dealer, Anne Friedman. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert, if you plan on watching Made You Look, you should probably go do that before going any further. So check that out. All right. If you're still with us, we're moving on. So at the time this story begins, in the mid-90s, Anne Friedman is an art dealer with 15 years experience. She worked at Knoedler Art Gallery. Now, Knoedler was an art gallery in New York City that was started around 1846. 1846.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over the years, they sold artwork to the likes of J.P. Morgan, Henry Clay Frick, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Walter P. Chrysler Jr., John Jacob Astor, Andrew Mellon. They sold to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Louvre, and many, 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 many others. Eventually, in 1971, Armand Hammer bought the Knoedler, reportedly because his son Michael Hammer was interested in running it, which he eventually did, until its ultimate demise in 2011. Fun fact, Michael Hammer is the actor Armie Hammer's father. And if you have any interest in reading about the fraught legacy of the men in that family and the multi-generational saga of sex, money, drugs, and betrayal, there is an article by Julie Miller in Vanity Fair that I recommend. It's
that
just
is some,
the tip of the iceberg.
That is some clickbaity sparkage.
That's some clickbaity.
It's Michael Hammer
Yes.
is Armie Hammer's dad.
That's
and
right.
he looks like if a raisin and a lion had a baby, that would be
A
what he
raisin
looks
lion.
like.
Yes.
Yes.
That's your phrase, raisin lion.
He's a raisin lion.
He's a raisin lion. That is correct. He's overly tanned and just wrinkled, and then
but just that head of
white
hair
blowing in the breeze from his.
Did I make up? What did he wear to court? He wore like
blue velvet or some velvet suit. Yes. So he's a character, shall we say?
Yeah.
But the documentary stopped short of. Well, they do point some fingers, but they stop short of like delving into the long line of, I guess, criminal activity in the Hammer family. Like they stop short of that, but they do kind of like lay some seeds in case you were, intrigued enough to listen or to look up kind of what other types of things the family had gotten into,
But that Vanity Fair article goes there, it sounds like.
It goes there, but it is tip of the iceberg. But we're talking about like Russian oligarchs. Like we're talking about like, oh my God. I think in an interview, I think Armie Hammer even says like we used to have a Gorbachev image in our home given to us by Gorbachev. So there were like...
Wow. I give you the gift of a painting of myself. That's what I'm going to get you for your birthday's coming up, Cammie, and I'm getting you that. And then how recently was the article written, and does it get into the travails of Armie Hammer and all of his nonsense?
Exactly where that article starts with Armie. And it's
I feel like I'm going to have to take a shower after that article.
Yes, you will. Because it's basically like to understand Armie, you need to understand his dad and his dad and his dad.
Wow.
Back to Forged Art. You can check Vanity Fair for all the rest of it. So Michael Hammer ran the Knoedler Gallery, and the Knoedler Gallery closed in 2011 amid controversy and lawsuits accusing them of fraud and an $80 million scandal. At that time, the gallery was one of the oldest commercial art galleries in the U.S., having operated for over 165 years. The gallery was certainly considered old guard and had dealt in all the greats over the years, except, ironically, it kind of missed the abstract expressionist era, which is mid-century, around the 1950s. They didn't really deal in the abstract expressionists, which in the end are the paintings that brought the gallery down. But let me go back. Our story begins in 1995 with Anne Friedman, the art dealer at Knoedler Gallery. Anne is told by a friend that they have a friend who has a trove of undiscovered paintings from a source who would like to remain anonymous. Specifically, she has a Rothko. Would Anne like to take a look? And sure enough, Anne agrees to meet the woman. The woman with paintings to sell is named Glafira Rosales. She comes with the Rothko painting. She says she represents a seller who, again, would like to remain anonymous. But the story is the man came over from Europe. While in New York City, he and his wife bought some paintings. They eventually moved to Mexico, and the paintings have been in his basement ever since. And she mentions the name of an art dealer, a real person named Alfonso Osorio. In the art world, this name means something. So Anne Friedman's ears perk up. Alfonso was a known patron of Jackson Pollock. So Glafira's story sounds like it might have some legitimacy.
Okay.
And by the way, Anne Friedman is in love with the Rothko. It's a beautiful painting. It appears to be legit in every way, signature and all. So supposedly, Glafira says her cellar has more paintings. Again, they've been in the basement. He gave them to his son, and the son is happy to let them go for super cheap because the son doesn't care about money. Interesting. There is a peppering of potentially true things in here, but it also sounds a little bit too good to be true in retrospect.
Okay.
I mean, how many people do you know that have, a painting worth millions and they don't mind if they sell it for just, whatever.
Because they don't really care.
Because they don't really care about money.
Yeah.
So it sounds a bit too good to be true in retrospect. But of course, we're not looking in retrospect yet. We're in the late 90s. Anne is smitten with this painting. And remember what I said about self-justification. She is hearing enough information to make her believe a story that she really wants to believe is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you see, around the year 2000, in the art world, the abstract expressionist market really went crazy. This group was typically categorized as Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, Barnett Newman, Lee Krasner, Willem de Kooning, and Robert Motherwell. There were more, but those were some of the big names. And these were artists who were really in the history of our country. They're really the first American artists to gain international acclaim. And at the same time, they really did not expect to get the attention of collectors, but they did. In fact, Jackson Pollock was incredibly famous in his lifetime, which is rare. There was a huge feature in Life magazine asking in the title, is this the most famous artist of our time, or something like that? Now, fun side note, I arrived in New York City in the mid-90s, and I was working for Blue Man Group as it really took off from just a weird abstract kind of show. But the show had many references, both overt references and some more like Easter eggs, if you knew what to look for, really paying homage to the abstract expressionists. There were references to Pollock, Jasper Johns, Motherwell, and others. And having grown up in Kansas, I can assure you this was my introduction to these artists. I had no clue prior to that. And now to look back and think, at this very time, the art market was heating up for collectors to get their hands on these works. And lo and behold, new and previously unseen works by these artists are somehow showing up at the Knoedler Gallery, landing in Anne Friedman's lap. It must have been very, very, very tempting for her to grab onto any potential proof that they were real.
Sure.
But not so fast. For these paintings to sell for market value at that time in the multi-millions, they would need to be able to prove their provenance, right? Provenance or provenance. People said
Sometimes
it two
they
different
say
ways.
Provenance.
Provenance? Provenance is like a paper trail. Like if you bought a house, there's a record of all the owners of the house through the years, and a painting should have that too. A trail that leads back to the studio it was painted in and the painter who painted it. Now, Glafira claims the records have been lost over the years, sadly. What should we do? And in the documentary, to hear Anne Friedman talk about it, mistakes were made, but not by her. In various clips throughout the films, she says things like, yes, there was some mystery, but there's often mystery in provenance. She says that listen, in the 1950s, there were collectors, Walter Chrysler, Roy Neuberger, who were well known to go to an artist studio and just buy a whole bunch of paintings at a time, pay in cash, cheaper by the dozen. She said, those wouldn't have accurate records. She said, remember, these artists were literally starving artists. So it's more possible, like they needed to sell. They might not have been great at keeping records. Plus. Records can be fabricated and lost. So, we can't rule this out. She claims she believed 100% that these paintings were real. And when I say these paintings, I mean multiple paintings over many years, but I'll get to that. Right now, let's just think about the Rothko. So if a painting doesn't have a clear provenance, one thing you can do is go to the authors of a particular artist's catalogue raisonné. What is a catalogue raisonné, you ask? Why, it is a comprehensive catalog of the authentic works, all the known works of a particular artist. Now, everyone seems to accept the fact that there might be other works by these artists that that didn't get documented. But the authors of these catalogs tend to know if there are particular gaps in the artist's documentation or history, or when and where additional paintings might have gotten made, because they know their life so well. They literally know when they traveled to Arizona and painted a few paintings there, or when their mother died and they didn't paint at all for 3 years. Like they totally know. So if you're looking for authentication for a new work of art, you might go to the people who made the catalog and ask if they would give you an opinion on the authenticity of the painting. In the case of the Rothko, one of these authors said in writing, "Yowza, this is a Rothko," like very excitedly. Yeah. So, Anne does have this on her side. Like she does have things in writing from very well-known people that are like, yeah, looks good.
Experts in the field authenticating the work.
That's right. Or saying very affirmative things that stop short of saying for sure. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. People saying very carefully within their realm of experience, I can tell you these are the nails that Rothko used. This is the type of canvas he used. This is the paint he used. And then you have to take it from there. So Anne had many of these types of documents. And of course, the ones that she kept bundled together are all the ones with affirming information. And then there were others that did not affirm. So over time, Glafira brought in more potential Rothkos. The National Gallery of Art said they were doing a Rothko catalog raisonné, and they would like to include these works. So, you can infer from that, you don't typically include works that aren't real. So, again, these are like positive affirmation, many, many sources, but not all sources. So the Knoedler Gallery sold these Rothkos. Then Glafira brought in a Jackson Pollock and continued to bring in others. In the documentary, this is where they cut to M.H. Miller from the New York Times saying something along the lines of, either Anne Friedman was complicit in this scam, or she's one of the stupidest art dealers of all time. Which, name calling isn't helpful. But here's where you begin to see in retrospect, like how she got duped. According to M.H. Miller, she wanted to believe it because it's better for everyone if it's real. Such an extraordinary discovery, this treasure trove of previously unknown masterpieces by some of the most celebrated artists of the 20th century. It's incredibly tempting to believe all of it. Now, over the years, as Knoedler is selling these paintings and asking people to authenticate them, some people in the art world are wondering, wow, how is it possible that all of these paintings were just like in someone's basement? And as the questions come up, Anne Friedman just doubles down on her belief in them. And yeah, it's been lucrative. They buy one of these Rothkos from Glafira for, say, like $900,000. then they sell it for $8 million. Like, it's
Wow.
not a bad investment. So in 2003, Jack Levy, a Goldman Sachs executive, bought an untitled Jackson Pollock for $2 million, but said he wanted to get it independently authenticated or else he would want his money back. Knoedler said, fine, go for it. He sent it to the International Foundation for Art Research. And they said, clear as day, no, this is not a Pollock.
Ooh.
Now, Knoedler Gallery gave Levy his money back, but they promptly put the painting back on sale as a Jackson Pollock.
There you go.
There you go. And they buried
That is
the
willful.
paperwork. That is
Yes.
willful.
Yeah.
They buried the paperwork from the International Foundation for Art Research. They just pretended that didn't happen, just covered it up. And because you see, if one of these paintings wasn't real, most likely none of them were real. They could not risk having to give all the money back for all the potentially fake paintings they've sold. And as Anne clings to her story, the story that allows her to have sold $65 million in fake artwork, one of the things Glafira has going for her is that most people, even as they became suspicious of where all these paintings were coming from, didn't really believe that a single human being could possibly be cranking out such high quality frauds of so many different artists. Like, who could possibly master all these different styles of art?
Yeah.
Who indeed? I'll skip to the beginning of the end.
Spoilers! Get into these spoilers!
Over the years, information kept like seeping out. People felt uncertain about what was really going on, but the Knoedler Gallery and Anne Friedman continued to sell paintings they bought from Glafira Rosales until all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the New York Times announces Anne Friedman is stepping down and no longer works at Knoedler. Now, she claims they pushed her out so she could be the scapegoat. They claim she left willingly. Turns out someone from the Motherwell Foundation at some point tipped off the FBI about Glafira, and they began an investigation. They wanted to get to the bottom of whether it was Glafira acting alone or whether someone at Knoedler was in on it. Then in 2011, one of their collectors, Pierre Lagrange, was getting a divorce, a very public and very nasty divorce. They were fighting over everything, and he and his soon-to-be ex-wife tried to sell their Jackson Pollock so they can split the money. And Sotheby's would not resell the painting because they had questions about its provenance. So Pierre gets an expert to analyze the pigment used in the painting. Turns out a yellow paint that had not been available until 1970 was used in the painting. And since it is well known that Pollock died in a car crash in 1956, it was impossible for him to have painted this painting.
Fuck.
So Pierre goes to Knoedler Gallery. Instead of being concerned that they may have sold a fake painting, which you would expect, oh my God, that's our reputation on the line. Instead of saying that, they say, sorry, statute of limitations. See ya.
Wow.
And then like 2 days later, they announce to the world they are closing their doors. They won't have to listen to all the buyers who want their money back. They're out. Well, 10 people sued, which I think is a really small number, frankly. All but 9 of those settled out of court. And the FBI charged Glafira Rosales. She pleaded guilty to selling over 60 fake works of art to 2 New York galleries, conspiracy to commit money laundering, tax evasion, and wire fraud. She was ordered to serve 3 months in jail and pay $81 million to the victims of the Knoedler art fraud scheme. She received leniency, though, because she cooperated with the FBI. So who knows how much she actually paid back. Her boyfriend and his brother were also indicted for fraud, but they fled to Spain, where they are citizens, and a court in Spain ruled that they could not be extradited to the U.S. The FBI did not feel confident that they had enough evidence to prove without a doubt that Anne Friedman and the Knoedler Gallery were in on the scheme. So that was it. No one was going to be held accountable for millions of dollars being swindled. Who else could have been in on this? Oh, yes, the artist. Where the hell were these paintings coming from? These paintings that were so good that many, many people were fooled and continue to stand by their beliefs to this day. The answer to that question is a math professor in Queens, New York, named Pei Shen Quan. In China, Pei Shen had been an accomplished painter, literally a big name. He came to the U.S. to paint, but he just didn't break through. He began painting for Glafira, and she paid him around $9,000 per painting.
Wow.
Until he went into a gallery and saw a painting he painted for sale for millions. Then he demanded more, but they don't say how much more. I don't know how high he raised his price, but I think he was getting more than $9,000.
Wow.
When Glafira was arrested, Pei Shen disappeared back to China, where he is very likely to stay. No one else will be held accountable for this $80 million scam. So many things fascinate me about this. First of all, I remember I mentioned one of those. So one case went to court.
Yeah.
They laid out their case for why they wanted $20 million in emotional damages because they bought an $8 million painting that turned out to be a fake. And I wondered to myself, do you think like a jury of normal, just average citizens, like
who aren't billionaires,
is sympathetic to that? Like, you spent $8 million on a painting. It didn't turn out to be painted by the person you thought it was. And so therefore you want $24 million back just to get over it. I mean, the thing is also like, this is a painting that they said it took their breath away. This was the Rothko. They loved it so much. They paid $8 million for it. Now, the painting hasn't changed.
That's right.
If it moved you emotionally then, why doesn't it move you emotionally now?
I'm so fascinated by this because it's so much around thought work, the thoughts that we think and how they make us feel.
Yeah.
And the stories we tell ourselves and how they make us feel.
Yes.
And when I'm on one hand, I can see, yes, that painting moved you.
Yes.
Whoever's hand was attached to the brush, the art moved you.
That's right.
And on the other hand, I'm sort of like, if you thought that the body attached to the arm, attached to the hand, attached to the brush was Mark Rothko, that is a meaningful part of the narrative.
100%. And I get that, like, there's a limited number of Rothko works, actual Rothko works. That's supply and demand. I totally get, that's going to, create a pricing structure just based on that. But I think it is so interesting that a work of art that moved you would no longer move you if the person who painted it wasn't who you thought it was. I totally get that it wouldn't maybe necessarily have as much value, but it certainly, like, how does it go from 8 million to just completely worthless? Do you know what I mean? There's no in between. There's no in between.
Yeah.
So fascinating. In the courtroom, apparently there was even an argument about whether or not, like, the black square went on top or the red square went on top. Like, what
That's right. They couldn't figure out how to orient the painting.
Yes.
Like how to just set it up in the courtroom on the stand.
Right. And they're like, how did Rothko intend it? Which way was it supposed to go? Until someone said Rothko didn't paint it. So he probably doesn't care. This is not his. So it's
The
just
bones of Rothko don't care either.
They don't
Yes.
care.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
such a funny idea. This thought of squabbling over the way a fake painting was meant to be displayed.
I remember also watching that documentary and just really being fascinated by watching. I was like, oh, rich people problems.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like, oh God, you're going to leave it to a jury to be like, but that did, even that court case settled out of court. They presented their case. And then before Ann Friedman and Michael Hammer got on the stand, they accepted a settlement.
They settled.
Yeah, they settled.
Yeah.
So they never got to tell their side of the story. But one of my favorite things of the documentary is that they have an expert in the film named Maria Konnikova, who's the author of a book called The Confidence Game. And she says, and it's all about essentially con artists and the things at play in our mind. She says, a master con artist gives you what you want. Good con artists are very good psychologists. They understand human need, human desire, how hope and belief work. She goes on to say, if you are a victim of a con where you have been fooled, as evidence comes in against you, you are more likely to double down. Instead of doubting yourself, like maybe I was wrong, you say, no, I was so right. It's a psychological process that is born out of cognitive dissonance, which means that your perception of the world and the evidence are no longer matching. So again, I say, mistakes were made, but not by Ann Friedman. Not by Ann Friedman. She doubled and tripled down. And over the years, she never wavered. We'll never know if she knew she was selling fakes or if she was so successful at convincing herself. The story she told herself about what she was doing was so convincing that she could justify it. I don't know, Sis. We'll never know. In the meantime, what the hell do we make of this? Well, I'm taking with me a question of how I value art. Like, is it the way I would value a precious one-of-a-kind artifact that can never be created again by a particular person? That's one way, and that's fine. Or is it based on how the work of art makes me feel, regardless of, whose hand was attached to it? I'm also making just a curious exploration. Wes and I have done a lot of talking about okay, hang on. Which art forms does this apply to? Because there's many, many art forms that we just fully accept are going to be reproductions, if you will. A dance piece, a piece of choreography performed by a different person than the person who created it. It might elevate it. It might not. Acting performances, people who originate a role or people who step into a role, different productions of a written piece of work, all are different and can't be compared, or can be, but I guess it's subjective. But with visual art, it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. I'm just going to sidebar really quickly. I also watched There Are No Fakes, which is another story. It's a story of the lead singer of the Bare Naked Ladies bought a painting that he believed to be Norval Morrisseau.
Oh, yeah.
Norval Morrisseau. And come to find out, it's a slippery slope into this seedy world of, again, sexual abuse, I should say, drugs, money, and betrayal. It's all still there. This ring of guys that were creating fake Norval Morrisseau's, and Norval was the first indigenous artist to really gain, global acclaim for his work. It has a very tribal feel. It's bright colors. It's so signature.
Did this all take place in Canada?
All took place in Canada. And these guys, the ones who are selling them, like they flooded the market with literally thousands of fake ones. And so then that all went to court fighting over, and their feeling was there are no fakes. There are no fakes. If you've got one, you've got one.
Did they flood the market after the death of the artist?
I think it started before. The fakes definitely started while he was still alive, but he had Parkinson's. So, there wasn't a lot that he could do to fight it in his later years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's another really, really interesting story, again, about like, I think like the art market, who's really like authenticating things. Does it matter to you? If you loved this painting, does it matter to you? Or does it matter to you that you paid the price for it to be from him, made by him, but isn't really what it comes down to is like the group of people that need to protect. They really need to protect the idea that there are no fakes out there, because all the people who spent millions of dollars on their painting will begin to question and want to bring that back and want to get a refund. You know what I mean? Like there's too much at stake. And that is why I think about Anne Friedman and the justification that must happen, because there's just too much at stake to say, I think I made a mistake. The other thing I'm going to take away is like, just never underestimate the powerful need to justify our behaviors so that we can feel safe, understood, vindicated, etc. I think about this when writing characters, and I think it's a fascinating thing to watch a character do it as well. But we have our human nature, like we have a profound need to be right. And in particular, in the US especially, like we have a profound need to be morally right. Sometimes like religiously right. Like that will prove it. It can be extraordinarily difficult to admit that I made a mistake. But I personally believe it's one of the most powerful things you can do to build trust and lasting relationships with our loved ones, our peers, our coworkers. It's disarming, and I think it's empowering, and I try to do it whenever I can. Some may see it as a sign of weakness, but I see it as a strength, genuinely. And especially when I can, like, if I can catch my brain trying to justify in those moments, I do like to pause and say, hold on. Mistakes were made, in particular by me. I made a mistake. And then hope for forgiveness.
Cams, as I wrote down a note when you first started the Spark, which is, I think I have maybe a flip of the mistakes were made, but not by me. I have a tendency to think that the fault is mine. Like do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do completely. And I think maybe that's a different like psychological thing at play.
It's a whole different problem.
I mean, genuinely, like I'm not even trying to be funny, but because I also had that, and just based on my upbringing, way more likely. And maybe that makes us more capable of admitting when we are actually wrong about something, because we've had a lifetime of admitting to things that we're wrong, like that we're wrong, we're in the wrong when actually we're not, but we were blamed ourselves anyway. But for some people, I think it's like slightly different, like circumstances at play. This is like based on when you really do something, and you can't wrap your brain around how it does not connect to who you think you are. I'm
going to keep an eye out for this in myself and just in the world, and in, like I said, like in the TV show or in a book, characters, things like that. The other thing that I'm fascinated by, there's that documentary is so good. And I'm so glad you did it as a spark. I learned so much about the art world and how much of it is fallible, I guess we'll say.
Completely.
But I also just learned words like provenance and stuff like that I didn't know before. But I'll tell you who I was fascinated by, and I would like a whole documentary just on them, is the artist who did these paintings. He's really extraordinary. And I thought, what a crazy superpower to have, to be able to, if you can, they show a little bit of footage of him holding, just like torn out of a magazine, like a photograph of a painting, and him just standing there painting it. And I was like, what a crazy superpower to be able to look at something, anything, and then make your hand paint it.
Suze, so I'm also fascinated by that. And I don't know if you remember this part of the documentary, but it seems like a crazy superpower to us, but they have a small section where they talk about, so this is the very different culture in China than here. So American culture is based on a rugged individualism, like from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
China, they basically make the point, like, this is not an extraordinary superpower in China, because in China, they are not taught to have original thought or original expression. They are taught to copy. So they go there with their cameras and find like multiple art shops where people are making exact replicas of masterpieces of art and selling them. So there's an entire market, obviously, like they're making money off of it. I was shocked anyone let them film in there, but they were like, this is not, it's so foreign to us because of, our country's culture and what we are taught to value. But it's very different there. And so I thought that was a fascinating point. Like, you go down that rabbit hole and study that at length.
It's fascinating. What an interesting spark.
Thank you, Suze.
Made you look.
I
will also say, as you're talking about all of this, the what I want to make of it, in my mind, is how much I love to paint for nobody but myself. We just had this very, very deep conversation in the Spark File Select Group Creativity Coaching Program with one of our own, Maida Wagner, who is a participant in the group, but she presented this very day. Hi, Maida. And we were talking about her 5 creative types, and one of them is the artisan, which is someone who just makes art for art's sake and doesn't really need anybody to read it or see it. And I was like, when it comes to painting, that I am an artisan. I do not care. I don't need to post it on Instagram. I don't need anybody's adulation. I just like doing it.
Yes.
And as the whole time you were talking, I was just like, I want to paint.
Yes.
I just want to paint for my own pleasure.
You'll just pick up a brush.
Maybe. Or I might vacuum up dog hair. It's hard. It's neck and neck. It's hard to say. Who's going to win? Clean the house or paint? We'll see. Should we take a little break? And then we'll continue the spark. All right.
Sounds great.
The Spark File!
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready. What you got?
Oh, Laura Camion. I have been so excited about this next spark for so long. I cannot even tell you. This is like one of those, I have been so excited to do this, and today's the day. So, if you all have been listening to this pod for a while, you might recall that back in 2019, Laura and I challenged each other, and I challenged myself to not buy any clothes for the entire year. Anybody? Nobody?
Anyone?
But
remember?
I think I did, if I remember correctly, I did pretty well. I think I bought a secondhand sweater and I bought 2 souvenir shirts that entire year. And I was learned so many things. Number one, it was not a hardship.
Yes.
I had plenty of clothes to begin with.
Yes.
And it proved to me that I could work with what I already had. I saved money, and I realized that so much of my clothes shopping was this kind of misguided attempt at creativity. And I think I've said this before on the pod. It felt like my body or my brain was trying to counterfeit the feeling that I get when I actually create. And the whole experiment gave me this chance to sing along with me, everybody, consume less and create more.
Yes.
Like a lot of that time that I spent like online shopping for clothes, etc., because I wasn't using my time to do that, I was using my time to make stuff like this podcast. It totally worked. It really reset me. Cams, I think that you did pretty good too.
I did.
You had to buy some stuff for work.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, and I did not go back and check, but I feel like you had to buy some bras or...
I had to buy a few things, but not much. It definitely created a drastic shift that helped my pocketbook and my time 100%.
Yes.
There were times when I would scroll through and put, $1,000 worth of stuff into the shopping cart.
Yes.
And then I'm like, I'm not buying this.
Yes.
But I just wasted an hour.
Yeah.
So then it would just be like, and delete. What the heck did I just do all that for? That was crazy.
Yeah, totally. I've also felt like I reset.
Yeah.
I just like popped out of that gear or took that off the table. Then 2020 came. We slid into I don't know if you guys heard, but we slid into a global pandemic.
Oh.
And so still I continued that pause on buying clothes because I wasn't fucking going anywhere. So I was like, why do I need to buy clothes? And then around the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021, I was in a Zoom workout class with a fitness instructor that I really love. And they had on this big pink fuzzy fleece sweatshirt. And I was like, I want that. I want that big, cozy. I want that thing that my dogs can fit in when I'm working or podcasting. And I went and found that sweatshirt and I started buying clothes again. Some of it was what we'll call fast fashion. Some of it was used, but most of it, Laura, was the fashion equivalent of comfort food. It was like soft and cozy and roomy and fuzzy and a little bit funky. And then I pumped the brakes again and I remembered this spark that I have had in my file for quite some time. And that spark is the Curated Closet. The Curated Closet is a book by Anushka Rees that I had heard about, and it came surprisingly highly recommended. And it got at something that I have tried unsuccessfully to address before. This is a code that I've tried to crack previously, and that is how to assemble a wardrobe that is curated as fuck. And I'm going to use Anushka's words. The Curated Closet is a wardrobe that's perfectly tailored to your unique personal style and your life. It contains everything you need to feel confident and inspired every day, no more and no less. It is not based on trends, style typologies, or a cookie cutter list of wardrobe essentials. And I'll add, it's an approach that prioritizes quality over quantity, and it centers knowing yourself and expressing yourself through your clothing. And to me, all of it feels wildly creative. It's creative, like creative self-expression. It's creative limitations, which you have sparked about before. Like it's figuring out this sort of three-dimensional puzzle. But I've got to tell you, I literally have goosebumps right now. I'm so excited to share this with you.
I'm so excited too, because you have dropped a few breadcrumbs about this and I am really, really excited. Tell me more.
I think the first time that I talked to you about this, it was when we were starting to do more live podcasting and we were trying to figure out like how we wanted to dress when we podcasted because, we wanted to be comfortable, but we wanted to almost have like a look that was curated for each of us that represented who we were creatively at the time. And I was like, what if we did this book together? Like, what if we worked through this book together? And of course, we never had time, and then there was a pandemic. So nobody was live podcasting anywhere.
But maybe there's time now.
But hey, there's always the future. So backing it up, Anushka Rees talked about in this book how she used to have this big closet full of stuff, but she still had a tough time putting together an outfit to go to brunch. If she had to put anything together more than her typical jeans and a t-shirt, it took her an hour. She said, in retrospect, it's no wonder that I was unhappy with my wardrobe. I was stuck in the typical life cycle of the fast shopper because I was all about getting a good deal. I based my purchasing decisions above all on the price of a piece rather than its quality, how well it fit into my existing wardrobe, or even how much I liked it. I never took the time to truly figure out how I wanted to dress and what type of clothes would work for my life. I didn't have a strategy. I bought clothes on impulse and often based on other people's opinions of them without listening to my own creative impulses. The combination of all of these factors left me with a mishmash of no good pieces that suited neither my style nor my life. I might have had a full closet, but I didn't have anything to wear that I was actually excited about. And because of that, I always needed more. I kept on buying more and more of the same low quality stuff, usually for every new party or event that came up. But every new purchase, of course, just added to what was already an incoherent mess. Everything was just another quick fix. Camion, I was just like, yeah. I feel you, Anushka Reese.
Yes,
I feel that.
The amount of money. It also makes me think of that Carrie Bradshaw, the Sex and the City episode where it was like your closet, these shoes, like you could have had a down payment on a house.
On a house.
You could have had a down payment on a house, but instead you have, and sometimes I look at my clothes and I'm like, oh no.
I could have had a down payment on a house.
Yes.
Yeah. So she goes on. Fast forward a couple of years, I've stopped chasing trends and wasting my money on flimsy polyester pieces and seasonal must-haves, she says in quotes. I've learned how to buy less, but choose better. I own fewer clothes now, but I actually have something to wear.
Yes.
I hear that and I'm like, the human in me, the creative in me, I want this. I want this.
Yes.
She said that her approach to clothing took a complete 180 when her goal shifted from being fashionable to cultivating her own personal style. So she's like, fuck being fashionable. My profanity, not hers. And she's talking about cultivating your own personal style, which to me, some people, I'm sure they just like, this episode of this podcast isn't for me. To me, I do care about this. I do care about creative self-expression through my clothing, but I've never had an approach thoughtful enough to get me there, I think. Cams, as you listen to this, do you feel like you have cultivated a personal style or a curated closet that you love?
At times in my life, I do feel like I cultivated styles. I kind of went through like, I'm all skirts, skirts and heels and like.
And when you were all skirts, I was like, I'm all skirts. You started wearing great little, are they called like, they're not A-line skirts, but like a little bit like a fitted waist and it like flares out, hits under the knee, almost gives you almost kind of like a 50s. There might be a beautiful graphic pattern. Yeah. And I saw you in that and you would wear like a smart pair of like peep toe wedges. And I was like, I'm doing that. And then I just started to copy you. Yeah.
Thanks, Suze.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I did, like there were moments and then I kind of moved into like, I'm all about dresses. But to be honest, what it brings up for me is like, I think I struggle with like in my mind, what clothing I might choose to express myself, then what that clothing looks like on my body type, it just may not match. And so I think sometimes I've gotten into like, for my body type, I should probably wear these things, but then I end up feeling like I'm wearing someone else's clothes.
Compromise. You feel like it's a compromise.
Yeah. Do they talk about that?
She does talk about that a bit. But it is like it is a kind of a complex little code to crack. It's a complex little puzzle. And when I hear you say that, my next thought is, what are the garments that are an expression of you and also feel complementary to your body? Figuring that out. What feels true to you, but is also an expression of your body.
Yeah.
And I would say like part of that depends on brand. Like there are certain brands that are probably cut for your body that you're like, that is my jam.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are some that, there's stuff that I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
I have examples of this right now. This is I love the idea of, there are certain kinds of those wedge peep toe shoes that you always look so great in. I would go and you and I think we're the same shoe size. And I would either like, you would let me have a pair of yours, or like I would buy a pair of my own. And I was just like, I can't spend the day in this. This is not realistic for me. I love the idea of it, but in reality, I think I get seduced by the idea of things a lot. But it's I'm really working with myself to make sure that it really works with reality.
Yeah. I feel that same way. And I do feel like maybe just getting older and wiser, I feel like, oh, maybe I am actually more able to stop myself and being like, is it the idea of this skirt that seems so amazing? But let's think about the reality of that skirt or that whatever.
But I have to believe that for every body type, there are things that are attuned with your expression of self. And you're also like, this feels good. Like I can wear this without it digging in or being uncomfortable. And it also, you know how like when something fits well, it's like a puzzle piece that snaps into place. Like it's all of it. I remember did you ever read Mindy Kaling's first book?
No, I didn't.
She talks about that because she's a curvy girl, and she talks about how there are she just like has a whole chapter about knowing what works for her, and then also getting a little bit of really smart tailoring done, even on things like sweaters, so that it comes in where she wants it to come in. And it's, and she's a person who I feel like really knows what colors, what fit, what brands, what is an expression of herself that feels good and looks good.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think it's a puzzle, but I think if you're like, fuck that shit, I don't give a shit. But
I totally am. And I'm especially into like looking at my closet and being able to see everything that's there. I have a lot of options, all of which make me feel great.
That's right. That's right. It is like 3D chess. This book is, we'll get into it, but this book is surprisingly deep. It is surprisingly deep and surprisingly rigorous.
Wow.
To speak to all of this, Anushka says that a really good wardrobe is made up of pieces that have to check many boxes: fit, feel, functionality, fabrics, silhouette, quality. To your point, ideally, all the pieces work together in different combinations. And ideally, for me anyway, it culminates in a creative expression of oneself. And ideally, for me, it's cold water washable and it's non-iron. And I'm telling you, those are some of the dimensions, but those are a lot of dimensions that things have to.
That's right.
Just to speak to what you were saying, Laura, another thing when it comes to like the idea of something versus what is really going to work for each individual and then work together in the larger context of the wardrobe. Something that I am trying to get real with myself about is what my body is like now, because I can't fit into things that are in my closet right now that I love. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to again.
That's right.
And just being friends with the fact that I'm going to size up now.
Yeah.
Like feeling good about it.
Yeah.
Because the other option is having things in my closet that I'll be like, maybe someday. And every time my eye lands on it, I'm like, I don't feel great about myself that I'm not there yet. Like that's no good either.
Not great. I think about that because I have some bins of, smaller size clothes up top at the closet. And I'm aware of like, there's in particular like a dress that I'm like, oh, I love that dress so much. And I'm thinking, like, why don't I just actively look for a replacement for that dress that actually fits me?
That's what I'm talking
That
about.
right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Let it go.
I'm the same way with jeans. Like, this body is not fitting into things that like an earlier version of myself fit into, and just being like, then let it go, sell it, donate it, do something with it, so you don't feel like you're always fighting against it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's taking up energy. Like, that's like a program running in the background that's just sucking up energy.
Not doing us any favors. So to bring all of this to the surface and sort of start sorting this puzzle out requires some real conscious thought and research and creative problem solving. But it's one of those questions of how and when do you want to spend your time? Do you want to give some thought to this in advance of buying? Or do you want to take that time when you're standing in your closet in your underwear, trying to figure out what you can pull from the mishmash of elements that you have thrown together in your closet? Or do you want to spend time thinking about how much your shoes are killing you when you're actually at some event and you're like, fuck these shoes? So this is where I'm at. I am trying to spend time before the purchase instead of when I'm standing in the closet in my underwear or when I'm trapped in some problematic clothing in a real world situation. We're going to spend time with it somehow. So it's like, when do you want to spend time with it? And I'm like, maybe before the spending happens.
Yeah.
So regarding style, which feels like, to me, one of the most creative parts of this. It's not the only creative part, but it's one of the most creative parts of this. In addition to the creative problem solving of it all, Anushka says, the people I most admire for their style aren't those that follow every trend in dress and designer clothes from head to toe. Style icons don't follow rules. They make their own and each have a strong sense of style and a clear signature look. And after that realization, Anushka said, I set myself a new goal. I wanted to cultivate my own personal style and sort out the mess that was my wardrobe. And on top of that, I also wanted to see if there was somehow a system to all of this, something that others could replicate. And so I started my research. And Anushka's book is the culmination of all of this research. And she encourages the reader to look at it as a toolbox of tips and techniques and exercises and prompts designed to help the reader cultivate their own strong personal style and then build a functional wardrobe that allows them to express it. Cams, I cannot tell you again, when I talk about this, I don't know why it gives me like this very visceral feeling, but I'm so into this as a creative exercise. For decades, I have been, I am the proud child of two people who hoard, and I have had hoarding tendencies around clothing. And for decades, I have been drowning in too many clothes. Like, even my college dorm room was just like, it's still the same. You can barely just like make room to slide one more thing in there. And it's not because I adore all of those pieces of clothing. It's this combination of impulse purchases, that fast fashion.
I spent too much on this to get rid of it.
I spent too much on this to get rid of it. Yes. Some of it is because I have, as a person who auditions, if you're out there and you're listening to this, I have to have several different archetypal looks for different auditions. So even though I don't wear suits to an office anymore, I have to be able to, on demand, dress in a lot of different looks. But if I'm honest, mostly it's just a lack of a clear identity about how I want to express myself through my clothing. And sometimes that expression, again, sometimes it needs to be the red carpet version of me. And sometimes it wants to be like a polished, casual version of me for like a Zoom meeting or an interview. And sometimes the expression of me needs to be, today I need to be functional and comfortable so I can paint or get messy. But ideally, I was in a friend's closet the other day, and oh my God, was it beautiful. And it was one of those closets where you walk in, and this is just how it is every day. It wasn't for show. There was space between each garment, and all the garments were just like, taste the rainbow of their dress shirts and then their suits. Their clothes were so lovingly curated and hung. And I was like, I'm into that. So,
wow.
Are your closets, you're Jimmy jammed, aren't you? You got the...
Well, I got rid of a bunch a bunch of stuff.
Good job.
It's still more crowded than I would like it to be, but it's not like it was.
I've got work to do. So Anushka's approach to figuring out all of this, as I said, is surprisingly rigorous. And again, I cannot tell you how deep this book goes, but you can go as deep as you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like a personal investigation of what silhouettes, color stories, and fabrics you respond to. Again, what your lifestyle actually requires of your clothing,
Mm-hmm.
how to determine what basics and statement pieces and key pieces you need, and how to pull them all together so that you can really easily mix and match and create multiple looks that you love with pieces that you love. So there's thought experiments and there's writing exercises and there's research and there's closet editing. Cami, and it is so deep.
Wow.
It is super duper deep.
Wow.
I had time this week to dig into it, and I was just like, I'm never going to get through all of this, but I did enough. So I was like, I have a direction. So that was good.
Yeah.
And I don't, she's not, I love the way she writes it because I don't think she's like, you must do every step of this book. It's just, she gives you a lot of material to work with and you can go as deep as you want to go or not.
Mm-hmm.
Anushka says the perfect wardrobe isn't something that you can cook up in a weekend. Your personal style is the result of many different influences, all the people you have met over the years, all the places you have traveled. It's a truly personal thing that can take a little digging to fully uncover. But don't worry, the process is a lot of fun too. And I love that because it really does frame your expectations. Like, this is not something you're going to do. It's not overnight. It's not a weekend. Like, this is an ongoing investigation, but it's fun. And I will add, I think it is so creative.
Mm-hmm.
So
excited.
She does this really cool thing in the book where she's like, if you want to define your personal style from scratch, turn to chapter 4. To detox your wardrobe and reserve your closet space for pieces you love and wear regularly from now on, turn to chapter 7. It's all like this choose your own adventure of personal styling and creative self-expression.
Okay.
So one exercise I really enjoyed was distilling your personal style into one sentence. So she has you start by creating a mood board that expresses the overall feeling of your style. I did mine on Pinterest. And then she has you do a written summary of the key qualities of your style. And then you distill it down into one tasty sentence that you can carry in your heart to guide your closet curation. So on Pinterest, I looked at silhouettes and colors that I was drawn to, and that felt so creative and fun. All the pleasure of online shopping with none of the credit card bill. That was fun.
Yes.
And then I answered a bunch of Anushka's questions. What is the overall feeling of this style? My overall feeling was creative, comfortable, flattering, easy, inspiring. And I mean inspiring to me, not to anybody else, inspiring to me.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most important individual pieces?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, great fitting foundation pieces like jeans and classic accessories like my watch, sunglasses, my glasses, my wedding band, and then statement pieces like my creativity pants. Those are some really important individual pieces.
Uh-huh.
What are the most important colors? So for me, as I age and change, this has changed as well. Has this changed for you, Cams? The colors that you're drawn to?
Yeah, I think over time. Yeah.
My jam right now, as my hair has turned silver, is the full spectrum of lilacs and sherbets and white and like light wash denim and those colors. Oh my God. I just want to eat them. I love them so much. And then what are the most important silhouettes, cuts, and fits? And I like things that are well fitted, but comfortable, like pants that fit, but they're still roomy, comfortable, roomy tops, maxi dresses, maybe like with a little fitted crop jacket. And then are there any fabrics or materials that are essential to this style? So for me, soft, machine washable, cottons. If it's denim, it's got to have stretch in it so that I can move easily.
Yes.
I like shoes that are casual but stylish and healthy for my feet.
Yes.
Nana Susan needs shoes that are healthy for her feet. So I like white sneakers or like silver Chuck Taylors or Rothy's because they're washable.
Yeah.
And then Are there any styling tricks that are essential to this style? So for me, I like to fuck with my clothes. So I like to distress my clothes. I like a little French tuck. I like great basic accessories. And then the exercise is write down several concrete ways that 2 or more of the above elements can be combined within a single outfit. So you start to do that thing where you're like, I'm piecing things together. She's kind of teaching you to be your own best stylist in a way. But then I came up with my sentence, my distilled down sentence for my style.
What is it?
It is cozy, comfortable, creative, sherbety, chic.
That's amazing.
Cozy, comfortable, creative, sherbety, chic. And if you think about the things I like to wear, it is.
There you go.
So there you go. I like soft, cozy tops that a dog or two can fit into. I like things that are cozy to hug. I love that. I like things that, if I'm honest, keep smells in when I'm working or teaching. So if I'm up in front of a room, jumping around or whatever, I want it to be substantial enough that it keeps the smells in.
Capture the smell.
Totally. But I want a big splash of creativity running through it. Like I want maybe a splash of funkiness or creativity. And the whole thing comes together in my ideal. It looks strong and effortless and warm and creative from the outside. And again, from the inside, I want it to inspire my own creativity and confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cams, this is my summer art project.
That's amazing.
She then is like, gives you that thing of like, find a few typical outfits that reflect this style that you've distilled for yourself.
Yes.
I love like a white tank top on the top and then painted creativity pants on the bottom. And then maybe over the top of that, I haven't told you this because I didn't want to bust my own spark, but at thrift stores, I have been buying really broken in, really big men's button-down dress shirts that are really soft, just that have been washed 1 million times. And I sort of tie that over the top.
Ooh.
And then I put on my, like my wedding band and my watch and my cool sneakers for the day. Or if I need to, I'll wear like a little shootie or something for a client event.
Yeah.
Or sometimes like a men's Oxford shoe that is very comfortable and feels really good. Even talking about it, I'm like, that makes me feel confident and inspired and ready to rock.
Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah. So here's a few guidelines from Anushka. And I just want to say, as always with these things, I am scratching the surface of this book.
Of course.
I'm scratching the surface, but I liked some of these and I wanted to share them. So a guideline: reserve your closet space for items you love 100%. Anything ill-fitting, scratchy, worn out, barely good enough, or that simply doesn't fit your personal style is not invited.
Out,
baby.
Out. Amazing.
And she goes on to say, it may seem common sense to not buy things you don't really like all that much, let alone keep them in your closet or even wear them. But in reality, we often make do with imperfect things. We buy items that we only half like because they were on sale or a good deal. I'm so fucking guilty of this. We wear clothes that are so uncomfortable, we need to take them off as soon as we get home. Check. We keep items that stopped fitting years ago just in case they fit again someday. Guilty as charged. We wear shoes that we can barely walk in and that leave our feet covered in blisters. Amen, sister. We force ourselves to wear pieces that we feel only are so-so because they were expensive and we don't let that investment to go to waste. Yes. We wear clothes that ride up and tug in all the wrong places, and we wear outfits that don't make us feel confident or inspired because we simply don't have anything better in our wardrobe. I'm done with it. I'm too old for this shit, Anushka Reese.
No more.
No more.
No
We're burning our bras. It's when you really start trying to find things that really do check all those dimensions of compatibility, then it starts getting more curated. It does start getting more curated, but I still do have things that I absolutely love. So it's,
yes,
we're all going to be fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry for me, everybody. We're going to be fine. Again, back to this idea. According to Anushka, we do all of this because it's easier in the short term. To my earlier point, it takes less mental energy to buy that top you need for a work event, even though you don't really like how it fits around your bust line, than to spend another hour looking for one that you really love. But in the long run, putting more effort into selecting the right piece always pays off. Here's a few more of Anushka's guidelines. Be authentic. Forget conventional style typologies like classic or bohemian and create your own unique look. I'm excited about this Camian because I actually do feel like there are parts of my look that are borrowing from very like recognizable styles, but there's parts that I'm like, I don't know anybody else that dresses like this, but I fucking love it. So I'm psyched about that.
Yes.
Aim for quality. Build a wardrobe of high quality pieces that are going to last more than just a few years. I will say that my one exception to this is things that I know are going to get like stained out, like white t-shirts and white tank tops for me. I'm just like, I'll find something that fits well, but I'm not spending $50 on a t-shirt because unless I just know it's going to have to go.
Yeah.
But she also says being fashionable is totally optional. It is Anushka's observation that iconic style is deeply authentic. Again, don't worry about being fashionable. Be authentic.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. I quote her. What's key is that rather than seeing fashion as a ubiquitous standard, you see it for what it really is. An art form. Like music, architecture, and literature, fashion is a form of art and an important part of human culture that reflects both bigger cultural shifts and smaller movements, such as seasonal trends.
Yeah.
Now, what separates fashion from many other art forms is that it is much more prevalent in everyday life. In that sense, it is perhaps most comparable to music, another art form that most people have an opinion about. But unlike with clothes, you wouldn't make yourself listen to songs all day just because they are at the top of the charts right now or because a hip person told you to, right? Of course not. You listen to music that you like, and that's exactly what it should be like with fashion as well. Just like music, fashion should be about celebrating creativity and having fun. You should not feel bad about wearing a super trendy head to toe look if you love it, but you also shouldn't feel bad about wearing something that's not in line with what's currently considered to be the look. If you are a creative person, fashion can be a great outlet for experimentation, inspiration, and just having fun.
Yes.
I'm sparked by it. I'm sparked by it.
Yes.
I really am.
I can't wait to dig into this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a creative expression.
It is a creative expression. But as you move forward, dear listeners, Gentle Camian, and even myself, let us all remember, in Anushka's words, your style is ever evolving. Like all forms of creativity, developing a great sense of style is all about practice. So don't worry if you're not 100% sure you've discovered your own personal style yet. Bottom line, even if you don't feel completely ready yet, simply give it your best shot and revise it as you go along.
Yes.
I love her. I have to say, I don't know Anushka Reese. I don't know anything about her, but I love the way she's written this book. I love how deep it is.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. It's interesting. I wish that there were more. There's pictures in the book, and I wish that there was more diversity of different types of people and different types, shapes and sizes and stuff like that. But I just love the way that she's written this book.
I'm fascinated, and it sounds really helpful on a lot of levels. Like go deep into, I don't know, it's not super like prescriptive. And
not
like,
at all.
You need these 8 items.
Oh no, she's not having any of that.
Yeah.
Like fuck the key 8 pieces for spraying. Again, my profanity, not Anushka Reese's, but it really is a deeper, I keep using this word, but it really is a deeper investigation of what you viscerally respond to, which you know we're all about. So let's get into what do we make of it?
Yes.
Well, Camian,
Well,
I'm going to show you.
Oh, outfits. Oh, cute.
Camian, I found well-fitting used pants. So for like $8 a pair, like these are J. Crew, you know, like good quality brands within my price point. So I make sure they fit well. Then I buy them used.
Fantastic.
And Camian, I went into my closet and I looked at the tops that I loved, and they're all in these sherbety colors. Like if a lilac grew in that color, I probably have a top in that color. So everywhere from like lavenders to pinks to like grays, all of the white, all of those colors. And then I went to the hardware store and I got paint samples of all of those colors, and I painted my thrift store pants.
You painted those pants.
I painted these pants.
I thought it was like tie-dye.
No, I painted them.
Oh,
and so
nice.
So I made pants.
And you can wash
Totally
them.
washable. These are my lilac pants that I've made.
Amazing.
So you can make some creativity pants like me, but please don't if you don't want to.
Oh, those are lovely.
I am making a curated closet.
There you go.
Anushka didn't lie. It is not a weekend job.
No.
She gives you really good guidance about how to, she's like, you need time.
Yes.
Here's the 6 bins you need. Label them accordingly. You're going to need snacks, hydrate, put some good music on.
And get to work.
She's not playing. She's like, and here's how you're going to do it.
Wow.
It takes some time. So I'm making a curated closet. What were you going to say?
Yes. I was going to ask, like, when she says time, like a week?
I think depends on how much shit you have in your closet and what your job is.
Yeah.
So my job is editing. I have a lot of editing to do. Editing. Somebody else, if you're like, I don't have shit, like I'm starting from scratch.
You might be like, I got to find things.
So for those folks, she recommends going to actual stores. Remember them, going to stores and trying lots of things on, not buying, but trying things on and seeing what fits and fabrics and brands, etc., that you like, and really starting to learn your style so that you can start to craft on paper what you might buy and then starting to curate it. So that would be an approach for somebody who's starting at a different place.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, Cams, tell me where your mind's at with all of this. Like when you hear this, are you like, oh, I think my next steps would be?
I think my next steps would be I have lots of editing that I need to do.
Yeah.
I think I need to identify those pieces that I really, truly love, that I just like love wearing. Makes me happy. I feel comfortable. I feel good. I feel like myself, all of those things. And I think I need to do the work on personal style. I reflect back and I'm like, there were periods of time where I felt like I had it.
Yeah.
And defined it. And like other people would comment on it. Do you know what I mean? Like I had an awareness of it.
I copied it. Come on. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, come on. But I don't feel that way right now. But I also am thinking like this feels like just a perfect time to do it because I've been saying for a while, as have you and our, many of our conversations, that we don't want to like just go back into the world as we've always been.
Yeah.
So let us go back in the best version of ourselves with the best, with the best foundations in place to support a new way of living.
Yeah.
And I think, a curated closet is a very aspirational way to imagine living in years to come.
I'm with you. I also, what do we make of it? I love the idea of doing all of this. Some of it is work, but I have to say it's creative work, like playing with all of this.
Yeah.
I love the idea of making this really fun, flowing, relaxed, creative approach to getting dressed in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
That you step into your closet and there's space between the garments and you're like, I love you and I love you and I love you with you.
That's right.
That seems fucking fun to me.
I have to be honest, I have felt that way during the pandemic because of Zoom. And I'm always wearing things that I feel comfortable in, and it takes me 2 seconds to get dressed. And I don't have like a larger expectation of the overall look.
Well, it's great because with Zoom, there's not the 3-dimensional expectation. Like seriously, there have been times when I'm like, oh, look at young professional Laura Camion. And then you'll stand up and you're wearing biker shorts and Uggs. And I'm like, yeah, we don't have to, we don't have to rock it 3D from the waist down. Yeah. Busted.
I'm busted.
Yeah.
It's a perfect time to start thinking about all this.
Yeah.
It's really right on time.
I love having another avenue for creative self-expression.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's part of me that's just like, oh, this is hard. But I'm like, I think it's, for me anyway, kind of fun, worthy inquiry. And I love less consumption and more creativity.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're doing this in a thoughtful way, I feel like it's just like another opportunity for creativity and less buying shit.
Less buying.
Yeah.
More fun.
More fun.
Yeah. More freedom.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes to all of it. I think this is such a great spark.
I'm into it. Maybe I'll sell some of these like on Poshmark or Etsy or something. If anybody needs a pair of creativity pants handmade by Susan Blackwell, maybe I should.
That's going in our merch store.
Oh my God, you can buy them in our non-existent merch store. Coming soon.
Hey, merch store on the way.
I also want to recommend a great fabric paint if you are into like fucking with your clothes as much as I am. There's a fabric paint called Deco Art So Soft, and it has a very soft hand once it's on the fabric. This is literally house paint. This is interior house paint.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it some washing. It does have a stiffness to it, but I don't mind it because on the inside it's soft and I feel like a painter when I'm wearing them. And I like that.
There you go. Just
it's inspiring to me.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's my spark. Yes. I'm so excited to share it.
That's such a freaking great spark. I just added things to my to-do list though. Like I got to get on this.
When you're ready. And if you want to, it's one of those things that it's sort of like, it's like a fun creative project if you have the capacity. But
yeah,
with all of this stuff, to your point about we're coming out of this pandemic and we have learned so much about ourselves and had that pause to, some of us have, not all, but some of us had that pause to assess what is it that we truly want? Who do we want to be in the world? And I feel like this is another way to get there.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. So I've been, I've been shooting this TV show and there is a woman on wardrobe who her personal style is so bananas. It is so beautiful. And she just looks, talk about looking like $1 million. And I was talking with her the other day and I was like, I'm so excited about this, the curated closet. Blah, blah, blah. And I was asking her because clearly she is really dialed in to her creative self-expression through her clothing. She looks so great. And she was saying it has been born out of, I think she's a wildly creative and stylish person to begin with, but downsizing over several apartment moves and how it is now just those pieces that meet all the criteria. They fit. She loves them. They all work together. They express who she is. And I'm like, that's what I'm gunning for. And she's like, if you ever want to talk about it, if you ever need help, let's talk about it. And I was like, you said it. I'm so excited.
Yes.
Such a nerd. Yes. Anyway.
I mean, of course, who better to talk to? I have an image of an incredibly stylish wardrobe person, you know, that's of course. That's how they express themselves. That is literally the work that they do, is to put people into clothing that says something about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, about their character. Like that's their superpower. How awesome.
Her ability to articulate her style too, just spontaneously in a casual conversation. I was like, oh shit, this is the ongoing culmination and distillation of a lot of thought and care and creativity. Yes. So funsies. Anyway, I think that's it.
Oh my God, that's it.
I think that's it.
2 fun sparks.
This episode of The Spark File was made on Muncie, Lenape, and Seminole land. And as always, we hope this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen to us. If there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and fanned it up into a creative flame and you'd like to share the light of that, email us. Email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you've taken recently.
You can follow us on social media at The Spark File and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. Especially subscribe. It really helps other listeners find us. Also, if you liked this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, just like those clothes that you're not wearing anymore, donate, sell, repair, or move us to off-season storage.
If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to take it and make it. Bye.
Bye.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.